This is a sports catastrophe production. Hey there, hello there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to another On This Day video. And today is On This Day, January 7th, 1980. The Philadelphia Flyers, yes, those guys in the picture, they lost to the Minnesota North Stars 7-1. But you'll be asking yourself, why is this important? Well, simple. The Philadelphia Flyers at that time were carrying the longest NHL unbeaten streak in NHL history. It still is to this day, actually. They had not lost a game in 35 attempts, 25 wins and 10 ties. Wait a minute. Are you telling me, Cutter, that an unbeaten streak can have ties? There's no ties in hockey anymore. Yes, sir. I know, Mr. Doubter, but the fact of the matter is that things in the NHL were a lot different than they are now. Of course, we all are used to the fact that, a game goes through 60 minutes. And if it's tied after 60 minutes, we go to overtime. 3-on-3 for 5 minutes. And if nobody scores in the 3-on-3 overtime, then we basically see a shootout. 3 shooters aside, and basically it's every shooter for themselves. And you can win on shootouts. You still get a point to lose the shootout, which is fun. It's nice as candy. However, it wasn't always this way. No. Prior to 2005, when the shootout started happening, of course, after the stupid 1-year lockout, hockey games actually ended. Well, if it ends after 60 minutes, we have overtime. And you play overtime. You don't score in overtime. Nobody scores in overtime. You get a point. You lose in overtime. You get a point. It actually doesn't make sense because it's like an overtime loss is the same as a tie. Kind of awkward, don't you think? Where's the 3 points for a win philosophy that soccer has? But it just doesn't happen this way. That philosophy happened from 1983 to 2000. From 1983 to 2004, that was the philosophy. Overtime, 5 minutes of overtime, 5-on-5, eventually down to 4-on-4 in '99. But basically, in '99 was when they introduced the overtime loss as a point in the standings, whereas otherwise you don't. But before that, the Philadelphia Flyers were in a lot of tie games. Wait a minute. Are you saying that the Philadelphia Flyers played 10 overtime games and tied and couldn't score or be scored upon and all that? No, Mr. Doubter. The problem being is that there's a good reason for it. Let's go back to 1941, shall we? 1941 was when America got into the World War II effort. Canada had always been part of World War II efforts since the beginning of 1939 when Germany invaded Poland. But America didn't really have a lot of war effort until Pearl Harbor went down December 7th, 1941. And then America decided to press the war efforts. I know there were a lot of Americans who went to war before 41, but that was when America took the war seriously. Canada had to because, we were allies with the Brits. Still are to this day. So anyway, because of rationing and because of measures, the NHL decided, and wartime travel restrictions, they basically decided that if a game ends tied after regulation, that it stays tied, no overtime, no nothing. And basically it was just for the war. However, the NHL never changed that policy for 41 years. Okay, I can get in the 40s and 50s, but they never changed it after that. Well, to be clear, this is for regular season. Overtime always had been prevalent in the playoffs. It was kind of weird. It was like, wait a minute, the playoffs had overtime and all that. Why didn't the regular season? Lord knows. But the fact of the matter is that regular season overtime wasn't introduced until 1983. about 20 years too late if you ask me. Probably in the 1960s, once expansion happened and we got from 6 to 12 teams, maybe then they should have went with the overtime philosophy. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 3 bags full. Anyway, so the Flyers played 10 games that ended after regulation in a tie. Who knows? Maybe they would have lost one of those 10 games. If they had lost one of those 10 games in regulation, then freaking the Flyers streak would not exist and all that. 25 wins and 10 ties. Yeah, tell that to a next gen stats expert. The same, how the hell can games end in ties? Don't you mean overtime losses or shootout losses? Nope, plain ties, plain Jane ties. Another part of the video I was going to talk about with the Flyers is the long unbeaten streaks and how often has happened. This is the only time in NHL history that a team has an unbeaten streak of 30 or more games and all that. The second longest unbeaten streak happened in 1978 with the Montreal Canadiens. The Habs won 23 straight. Well, won 23 or 23 0 and 5. So they had a 28-game unbeaten streak on a Saturday night at home in front of a Canadian national audience when they took on the New York Rangers. Nothing special. The Rangers weren't that bad in 1978, but they weren't that good either. They had Espo, they had the Murdochs, they had Hedberg, they had Greshner. No, they didn't have Hedberg. I think Hedberg was still in WHA, I think. Or no, wait, no, I think he came to the Rangers in 77, 78. And of course they had, I guess, Shaggy Talbot, the coach that liked to wear tracksuits behind the bench. Jason. Fashion faux pas, especially in New York. So anyway, they came in on a Saturday, and guess what? They had this goalie named Hardy Astrom in that, number 31 for the Rangers. And if you watch the game on YouTube, and Oiler Fanatic has put it up on his YouTube page, that basically Rangers Habs from 1978 when the Rangers snapped that 28-game unbeaten streak. Because Hardy Astrom actually bragged to GM John Ferguson Sr. and head coach Talbot that he beat the Swedes in Sweden, he beat the Russians in Russia. Why not beat the Canadians in Canada? Of course, Canadian. There's a difference between Canadians, as in what our country people are called, and Canadiens, which is the hockey team. So anyway, Hardy Astrom boasted, and he backed it up, and the Rangers backed him up with a 6-3 win to knock Montreal flat. And no, that was not the famous 76-77 season for Montreal, which they went 60 wins, 8 losses, and 12 ties. That was the year after, when they went on that 28-game unbeaten streak, which is weird. But anyway, it didn't do Montreal anything bad. I mean, they did win the Stanley Cup again against Boston. The Rangers did get to the second round. I forget who knocked them out. I don't think Montreal. I think it wasn't Montreal or Boston. I think it was the Flyers who knocked the Rangers out in the second round in '78. I think. Regardless. So yeah, so undefeated streaks are hard, mostly because you can lose nowadays. You lose in the shootout or overtime. It doesn't really count as an unbeaten streak. Well, it kind of does, but you can't go on like 30 games without losing. And sometimes losing builds character and all that. Regardless, the Flyers had that 35-game unbeaten streak. And did that get them the Stanley Cup? No. They got to the Stanley Cup Finals, but a young upstart team called the New York Islanders, or the Cupcakes, as is known to New York Ranger fans. But basically, I'm not going to tell you the origin story of Cupcakes because I'll take too long. Regardless, the Flyers and Islanders played in Stanley Cup Finals, and the Islanders won Game 6. Yeah, and yes, that was the Stanley Cup Finals in which Nystrom scored that famous overtime goal. To me, the best call, of course, comes from CBC's Jim Robson, who was doing that game and all that. Yes, I know CBS had Dan Kelly, the legendary Dan Kelly Sr. doing the games. during that game, and his call wasn't as poignant as Jim Robson's. I am partially biased because I'm Canadian, but like that. But a funny fact about that Game 6, it was the last time an U.S. network broadcast an NHL game till the 1990 All-Star Game, which NBC picked up. I kid you not, CBS, NBC, ABC, they didn't do any NHL games. It was mostly cable companies that had them. But yeah, a major network. NBC had hockey for a while. People forget. Well, everyone knows NBC's got the U.S. rights now, but that wasn't always the case. Like in 1990, they had an NHL deal from 90 to 93 in a sense, and then ABC took over for a few years. Fox, the newcomers on the block with their sports programming in 96. Sorry, 94 picked up the U.S. rights and basically gave us that ugly Fox tracks. Huck, yick. CBS has never picked up NHL hockey ever again. ABC/ESPN did in the late 2000s. They did games, and NBC then picked up the rights from ABC. So yeah, it's amazing how one topic can branch out into so many different quotas and all that. So anyway, I'll leave you now before I really bore you. So anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do